Hi, in this video, I'm going to give an introduction to the Scottish Longitudinal Study, the SLS. So a bit about the history before I start. So basically, it was modelled on the sister study in England, the Office for National Statistics, ONS, LS, Longitudinal Study for England and Wales, generally referred throughout as the ONS-LS. It started in 1971 and there's specific reasons why it was created. There wasn't an original SLS in Scotland which was destroyed. It was only a 1% study and it was re-established starting with the 1991 census by various funders, but currently it's funded by the ESRC and supported by the NRS, National Records of Scotland. So what is it and who hosts and manages it? Well, the Longitudinal Studies Centre Scotland, LSCS, is based at the University of Edinburgh and the NRS. The SLS itself is hosted and managed by NRS, and I'll come on to in a bit that there's certain governance procedures that are in place that assess both research use of the SLS and what we do as a centre. So why? There were certain policy reasons why the SLS was important, and I'm sure you're probably well aware of these. Just to give a couple of examples, back in 1991, when the SLS starts from, just looking at this graph comparing England and Wales and Scotland, you could see that there are differences. Higher male unemployment, higher lower social class, overcrowding, and no car. This is from the same paper by Hanlon and others, and this looks across from 1981 to 2001 and looking at the difference. And this is the excess and mortality rates expressed as an excess in Scotland relative to England and Wales. You can see that there's an excess in all cores, certain heart type diseases, cancers, and self-harm. This is a more recent paper. It's a bit hard to understand this. It's a bit a busy graph, but this actually used the SLS. So it's looking at the all-cause mortality by occupational class in working age men. So what is it showing? You can see overall that Scotland is relatively much higher than all the other countries, and especially with our unskilled manual workers. But obviously, there's large confidence intervals for Scotland because ours was based on the SLS rather than the 100% population data that's available in some European countries. And this is the risk of CVD mortality. And again, Scotland has relatively high risk compared with other countries, although obviously the confidence intervals are high. So what is the SLS? I mean, that was just a sort of introduction to why Scotland is a bit different. So what is the SLS? It's a large-scale anonymised, that's the key thing, anonymised record linkage study, and it's designed to capture about 5.5% of the population. actually contains information on about 5.3%. But that's another story, and we have plenty technical working papers on that. It's based on 20 semi-random birthdays distributed across the course of the year. And these are on, I should say, a need-to-know basis, where only a core team, including the SLS database managers, know these. I've worked on the SLS since about 2008. I don't know them. There's no need for me to know them. Okay, the building blocks of census data, the SLS is census data. Vital events, your birth, death, marriages. Migration data from NHSCR, that's NHS Central Registry. We also have education data, and we have what we call annual residential location data, which is mobility data from GP registrations, although I should add we do not give direct access to this information. This needs to be worked indirectly with support staff, and it's never used together with payload data. In fact, staff are not allowed to see it together with payload data. I should say with permission, you can link in NHS health data, and there's another training module on this, working with health data, where you would apply via Idris, our colleagues there, to the Public Benefit and Privacy Panel for Health and Social Care, who would make a decision on whether you can add in health data to the SLS. I don't think I said before that education data was only available centrally in Scotland from 2007 onwards. I think I've got this in red because I was meant to say you're not given direct access to the data. And as I said, with permission, you could add in health data, which can include cancer prescribing, maternity data, and mental health inpatient and day case data. So I'll just give you a quick example of a timeline. We always have really cheery examples when we're doing the SLS that normally end in death, but I've tried not to do this one. So the SLS started in 1991. So they were born in, the person, let's say a female, was born in 1991. So the SLS hasn't started yet. Anything above the line is part of the SLS. Anything below the line could be linked in with appropriate permission. So we find them for the first time in census. Then they've left Scotland and they come back to Scotland. They've left to go to England. So we can easily find them through NHSCR data. Find them in 2001 census. And from 2007 onwards, we also have information on education data, which includes like free school meals, census, percentage absence from school. We also have them in 2011, so we know what's happened to them afterwards when they're maybe at university or joined the workforce. We know they get married because we've got it from vital events, and we know the birth of their child because we have births to SLS members from vital events data. But with permission, we can also add in child's health surveillance data, and that is preschool and school data. So it's like health and weight data and some development measures. All the hospitalisations they might have had through their childhood, through SMR1 data. And as I say, we always kind of have these kind of strange examples where they've got a lot going on, like they get cancer, but they're fine now. And then, of course, we can also link in the maternity data related to the vital events. And it would include information on smoking. The census, of course, is the main building block of the SLS. It's great, although, because it's asked of everyone and it's compulsory, but it's only every 10 years. This is some specimen forms. If you're interested in using the SLS, I always tell people, go away and have a look at the forms first, so you've got an idea what the questions were asked and how they're translate into any derived variables we have within the SLS. And obviously there's going to be a census in 2022. So plenty of information is recorded. As I said, some information is derived. There's no information on income. And we do have some household level information, tenure, number of cars, and we have LinkedIn area level information. So who do we actually have in our sample? We have just over 250,000 each census point, but actually due to migration, both in and out of Scotland, who do we have across the first 2 census points, and who do we have across these census points? And we only have about 152 across all 3 census points. Of course, we've got elderly people who might pass away. We've got new people coming in. So how this is our entries, our births over this period. I've only done up to 2011 because to simplify it, obviously it'll be updated for 2022 once that's sorted out. We've got about 46,000 people have come in through GP registrations. About 57,000 people have died as we exit the SLS, and we've had these embarkations. But embarkations are mainly picked up through re-registration with a GP in England and Wales, so we know this is an underestimate. This is the same information as the previous one, but with more detail, just to show that, again, we've got the way to come in, births, or you die to leave, but we also have at each census point, we have what we call the non-members table, which is information on everyone who's living with the census member, the SLS member at census time. And we also have vital events, so we have births to sample mothers and fathers, people that got married, and also people that were widowed. Obviously, you have to be legally married in order to be named on the death certificate for the spouse. So strengths, obviously really large numbers, no restriction on age, can look at some subgroups, and interest to plenty of different research areas. You can link in detailed geographical area information like you can add in SIMD or domain scores from SIMD, and there's potential to link to other data sets in the future. This could be obviously like COVID data subject to approval from PBPP. The weaknesses, of course, we don't have census, we don't have income or smoking. It's only every 10 years. They're confidential data. You've got to work in a safe setting. I'm going to come on to that in a second. For anyone who wants to listen to the talk on the data dictionary, the variables, people are quite often these days interested in looking at minority ethnic groups and doing analysis by religion. But of course, there's small numbers in Scotland, so I've sort of flashed up on the screen numbers we have within the SLS. And of course, there's the question, will there be a census after 2022? So I'm not going to dwell on this too much, this slide, but there's a lot of acts that allow the research using the SLS to be done. And that data has to be, so if you want to do a research project, I've got these written away, you have to apply to a research board that includes all the data controllers, and they make a decision whether they can use the data. We have a steering committee that, in fact, everyone in our centre is held accountable to, and a data custodian makes a decision on whether any finalised cleared output can go out to the world. So there's quite a lot of governance behind this, and if you're interested and you apply to the SLS, we will talk you through it. So we have a steering committee, that has representatives from all the data controllers and users. We have a research board that makes decision on research use of the SLS. So how does it all come together? So if you want to access the SLS, it's in a safe setting in Ladywell House, which is an NRS building, through standalone computers. Remote access is not possible. We advise everyone prior to using the SLS to do some training, something like this, and to understand about the data and our security protocols around holding the data. There are plenty of forms for you to sign in relation to starting work with SLS, and it might be worth looking at the other module on accessing the SLS. And you have to, so I'm not going to go into detail about all of these, other than to say you do need to complete training in information governance. All outputs pre-publication stage 1 are subject to statistical disclosure control. Oh yeah, I should have said before, you're provided with an extract, but it's not the whole SLS, and you produce outputs for clearing to take away. But more detailed on this slide in the access and the SLS talk. I should say that everything is actually on our website. We've got a step-by-step guide. So if you go to our website, along top guides and resources, and then down the left, the step-by-step guide, you'll find this. And it goes through in detail all the steps required, which is also in the other talk. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, so there's a lot of security around working with SLS to do your research. And just to say further information, yeah, from our website, browse the data dictionary. It's a key thing. Browse the data dictionary. Look at our step-by-step guide and attend training. That's what you're doing at the moment. Right, thank you.